actually really want to start off by saying one, thank you for shaping my childhood with your music.
Oh, thank you.
But I want to twist that up and say, what inspired you? I mean, you kind of got me into speed metal in a weird way of just the rock. So I mean, so growing up, what music inspired you to get you to where you are now?
Oh boy. Well, I grew up, I started playing piano when I was 3. I started writing when I was 5 and a half. I had my first little published work for a finger exercise handbook, which I wish I had a copy of. But I grew up listening to a lot of classical, a lot of whatever rock was, and I always loved rock. And when I got became a teenager, I got very much into like Black Sabbath, which was probably about the heaviest thing, and Led Zeppelin, of course. Anything that really wasn't pop, and anything where these brilliant guitar players just came up with these just death grooves from hell that just I felt through my whole soul. So I really veered towards that and lost a chunk, not really, but lost my hearing to that kind of stuff. But still never thought I'd end up in the music business, but they were huge. It was a huge inspiration on my future writing. I also listened to a ton of classical and learned how to play most of Rhapsody in Blue. I was a big George Gershwin fan. So just anything that was fast, I was always into. So that really
That
was the
explains a lot.
yeah, it's the inspiration. That was the inspiration. I never really sat around. The only chill stuff I would listen to is I had a ham radio. I think it was a ham radio or some sort of thing with a giant antenna my dad let me put on the roof so I could pick up stations in South America. And that's where I would get those sweet little Brazilian grooves, the mellow stuff, and that sexy kind of music, or the crazy stuff that they were doing, the sambas and whatnot. So, and that's how I channeled a lot of my angst as a teenager. And then into my 20s, ended up in new wave bands, but it just didn't have the rock thing that I
Now,
always wanted.
is it true though that you were in a band with E.G. Daily, or is that just Wikipedia lying to me?
No, it's true. I was in another band that was just breaking up. I was playing a gig at Club Lingerie on, I think it's on Sun. I know I can't remember what street it's on in Hollywood. And she came up and she said, "Hi, I'm E.G. Daily. I just got signed to A&M Records, and I have my album coming out, and I would love you to be in the band." And I said, "I would love to be in your band." And
Yeah.
it was a great band. Matt Bissonette on bass, who currently has been playing with Elton John for years. He's played with everybody. But Matt Sorum on drums, who went on to Guns N' Roses. I mean, this band rocked. And for the life of me, I cannot remember who played guitar.
That would be kind of how it goes.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
Well, that's great though. I love to hear that. I think all of that really does explain where you were in for my period of early 90s with Power Rangers and the X-Men, which I have to tell you that X-Men song is an earworm. It gets I will no 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 just think about it randomly. How do you
Yeah,
craft an earworm? As a music fan, I love pop music, so I'm like a Lady Gaga fan. You know that hook gets stuck in your head. You are very good at a hook that gets stuck in your head. How do you
that is
work that?
that is really my gift. I mean, I know so many great musicians that write. I'm a writer that plays. So my playing is not spectacular, but I can or look at something and know how to score it, or they can call and say, "We need a theme for," and boom, it just, the floodgates open. I grab my phone. I used to have little digital recorders everywhere. And prior to that, little cassette recorders just everywhere, because when it hits me, I just hum it in. And sometimes I listen back and I'm like, what the hell was I thinking? I know it's there. And then it comes back to me. So those little hooks come to me instantly. Then I just have to craft them into the song. I know what it's going to sound like. I just need to now get it out of my head and get it
That's
recorded.
such an interesting reverse of what I always hear. It feels like it is that traditional, like, oh, I got the song, now I got to think of the hook. You're like, no, no, I have what's going to get stuck in your head. I got
Yeah.
to fill in the gaps. And that's really interesting. And again, one of your most famous works is this Power Rangers theme song. Now you are back 30 years doing a
Yes.
redo of this. And I love, from what I've heard of this newer version, what was it like revisiting your work? And did it feel odd kind of paying homage to yourself? You're at that point where you're like, wow, I can reference me.
It probably would have felt, yeah. And what's interesting is in the temp score they gave me, they popped in some of the instrumental stuff from the songs I'd recut in 2012.
Oh yeah.
So, and I'd be with the director, he'd say, I just put this in because I want the rock thing there, but this obviously doesn't work. I said, yeah, it doesn't work. It should be faster. And let's bring out more energy. But it didn't feel odd because it's so different from what I scored in the original years of it, which was a bit more corny and less dialogue, and the stories were, very simple and kind of predictable, more predictable. This from out of the box is like disaster and what the hell's going on, and tragedy. I mean, it's just so emotional. So I didn't even feel, I just felt this is a whole new story, a whole new concept I'm scoring. It just happens to have the Power Rangers in it and Rita.
Yeah, and I mean the return of Rita. How did that feel for you to see? I don't know if you've kept up with the franchise at all, just throughout years. I know you've
No,
returned
I really haven't.
and things, but wasn't it? Was it just weird to see this kind of redone in a new era in a very very new way? Which I do love the new Rita. It's so
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. At first, I was just thinking, well, that's Rita. That was clever. They have this mask on her, and I saw some of the original before they dialed in all the effects on it, and it still was pretty spectacular. But the whole show is just, it's cut, edited so tight and moves so quickly, and there's so much action, and they were able to take you on this roller coaster ride in a way. So it really didn't feel like I was scoring Power Rangers. And I did some tech style music and a lot of orchestral stuff, and of course the rock stuff. And it was great to bounce around. It would have been impossible to do this 30 years ago with the technology back then. Now, it had maybe 150 sounds up, which I could just draw from at any time and just keep scoring in any style at any moment. But
That's
it was a lot of work.
that actually inspired like a new question. You are in this very privileged era of getting to work with such an analog, such an old school way, like you just mentioned, to this newer format. Do you like? Do you have you adapted well? Because I know some people are like, no, I refuse to. Like, and how have you done this? Because obviously it works well with your Power Rangers.
Well, I mean, when I started off in the 80s bands, I mean, you had a recording console that was massive. When I was at Saban, we had a giant console and two 24-track tape machines, and just mounds of gear in an air-conditioned room, and we mixed everything to quarter-inch tape. I mean, it was just so hard to do. And if I was singing something or playing something and made a mistake, you had to go back 30 seconds, wait for everything to lock, wait for the green light. And I sat there as I'm recording my vocals and punching in and punching out. So it was slow. If I had to use that technology now, I'd still be scoring this thing. It was so slow. And I've always been on the very cutting edge of technology. So even when I moved to this house in 2017, behind me, I had a giant desk with tons of outboard gear, which I really was starting not to use. And now I'm down to a lift up desk, a Mac Studio computer, and a monitor and speakers that tune themselves to the room. So everything's dead accurate. And the speakers are only about 10 inches. My last set was this giant pair of that weighed 45 pounds each. So I've kept up. I'm on the edge of everything, the latest software, millions of sounds, so I can have anything I want at any time.
Well, thank you for segueing to my next question of your range of sounds. Like, I know you from your animated stuff, or I love that you do background music of Dragon Ball Z, things like
Yeah.
that. But you've also done, which this also shows a lot of my personality, the America's Next Top Model music.
Yep.
Fun range for you. Is that fun to get to explore that, where you get to be like, you're almost forced? I mean, you've done housewife things, so I like to see that you get to that. Is that fun to play in different
Oh,
roles?
it's so diverse. I mean, yeah. I, I mean, I did the Saban shows, the three you mentioned. Then I left there. I still did stuff for Saban, but 2 weeks after I left there, I was working with this guy, Bob Ezrin, who produced The Wall, Pink Floyd, all these other albums. He had a gaming company. So now I was scoring games, which was very difficult back then because you had very limited memory, but it was still a good challenge. And then he set me up with this guy, John Anderson, the lead singer from the band Yes. And I spent 2 years with him doing indie albums. Also had a project with my ex-wife, which we finally got signed in 1999 because we were the biggest band online when the whole MP3 craze. So now I was doing that, but at the same time, she and I were doing tons of commercials. Plus, I was scoring things like Mummies Alive and whatnot for Deke Entertainment. So it's been incredibly diverse. It's never the same. And that's what's really kept me fresh
Yeah.
and also keeps me daily when I ever have time. There's a small group of composers I know, like, oh, check out this new library, check out this new library. I'm like, okay, that'll be good for if I have something emotional and need a small string section or whatever. So it's remarkable.
Yeah, I mean, I really, if I don't know if you have one yet, but if you have a book, I need to read all of this. You have some details, and I'm like, oh, just the guy from Yes, no big deal, like just a casual. That's just so cool, and I love that you have this range of work. Do you have an underrated work you feel like never got the love it deserved? Like, I was a VR Troopers fan, and I'm like, that had good music too. Like,
Yeah, that was fun.
so did you have an underrated work that you find you're like, I
No,
wish.
I think I've rolled with it, and that's it because the moment I complete a project, I'm on to the next one. So it's always forward thinking, which is great for me. And some stuff hasn't gone that well. Some of it I knew would not go that well. And there really hasn't been any disappointment. The only disappointment I ever had is I did this show, and it was only for a second. This great show called Hot in Cleveland with Betty White. And we did like 140 episodes. And the warm-up comedian, every once in a while, as a joke, when I was there in front of him, we were good friends. He'd go, does anybody know this theme? He'd play Power Rangers, everybody knew it. Then he'd go, how about this next theme? And he would play the theme to the show that they were at the taping for. And people were like, I don't know what that is.
As I have a partner who likes to skip the themes on Netflix when he does it, I'm like, stop it! People
Yeah.
work hard on these. I love these. Stop! I love this.
Yeah.
No,
That skip button, sometimes I will admit, if it's a 2 minute theme,
yes, yeah.
every time I'm like, that's I've heard it.
Season in, you're like, I've paid my dues to this composer. I can move on.
Yeah. I've listened for the first 10 episodes. God bless you.
No, you mentioned something that was interesting, that you're always moving forward, but
Always.
you have this X-Men theme that I've seen referenced multiple times now in the MCU, which I think
Yeah.
is really funny to see it live on. Did you expect it to do that? And have you enjoyed hearing that theme that I cannot believe my friend had it as a ringtone in college? I heard it every day.
I I did the show, and there was no one ever wrote, it was always Power Rangers, Power Rangers, Power Rangers, Power Rangers. And then maybe around 2010, people started talking about X-Men, maybe a little bit before, and Dragon Ball Z, which, as far as I knew, uh, was something that aired and went away. I didn't even know what was going on with it. And then so it came back as a really great surprise that this stuff was still live. And now X-Men is really suddenly huge.
Yeah.
and I know they're using the theme on the remake of it, but that's all I know about that show. I've tried to get into those Marvel people, but I haven't got there yet.
Oh, from what I've heard from any other actor, it is you work on it and you're like, I don't know what's happening here.
Yeah, that's what happens because you leave that world and you move. It's always it's high school.
Mhm.
You spend a couple years with people, you become great friends, you're going to know each other forever, and then over the following 3 months, which would be summer break, everybody just goes off to their thing, and you rarely, if ever, see or hear from them again.
That's no, yeah, that makes sense. As a film school kid, I thought the same thing with mine, and we've drifted off as well. No, I will now. Speaking of the future, what are you working on now? Is there any passion projects like this X-Men? I remember this Power Rangers. I cannot wait for people to hear the depth of it. But what else do you have going on?
Well, I'm still finishing. I've been working 4 years on and off on a game called The Next World with
Yeah,
a guy with which
hopefully this
he's
year.
premiering, I think, on the 16th, a trailer, which I still need to finish the music for. I wrote the song for it, but it's set up behind me. I've got to work on it
Wrap this
today.
up so we can get
But
to.
he said I've edited. I said, send me the edit so I can edit. So that if that comes out this year, that will be pretty huge. And then there's a couple other projects I had to sign NDAs on, and another one they're really pushing me for that I also can't bring up, but there is more stuff coming up. So and again, these projects are completely diverse. The
Mhm.
game is cyberpunk. The other stuff will be possibly a full orchestra.
Wow.
The other two may be finally that dark type of Breaking Bad sort of score.
Wow. Ooh. I love that you still at just this point in your career have done so much, still get to feel that little kid joy. I can see it in your face that you're
Oh
like,
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
need to do this. I love to hear that. No, Ron, thank you so much for speaking with me today. This was an absolute honor. Like I said, you've shaped so much of my life, and it's just really cool to hear that you are just as big of a nerd as I wanted you to be.
I am. I I totally am. When it comes